Hi, all, and welcome to the Found Artist Files, the podcast that delves into real stories that inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter who you are, your story matters. Every journey, no matter how big or how small, is worth celebrating. Here, we'll explore the powerful narratives of everyday people, artists, creators, and dreamers just like you, sharing the struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. So keep going, keep creating, and remember, you're crafting your own unique path, one story at a time. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. Today, we have Lindsey Normington. Hi, Lindsey.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, so excited for you to be here and so excited to learn a little bit more about you and your journey in the industry. So, would love to start off with that. Who are you and what do you do in the industry?
I'm Lindsey Normington. I'm an actress, writer. I am very involved in the sex work community, basically doing sex work from the age of 18 up until quite recently. And, those who know me and know my work know that that's pretty imbued with my acting work, and it's a huge part of my journey to this more, I guess you would say, like legitimized space in acting that I'm finding myself in currently, and attempting to stay afloat within. So that's what I'm all about.
Exciting. And, I know that you are, in any form of what it is that you're doing is still a form of creativeness and creativity. And so I'd love to kind of dive back into one of the earliest memories of performing for you. What was one of your earliest memories, and what do you think kept pulling you back into it as you grew up?
Earliest memory performing. It's so funny because something comes to mind and I just have no idea if it's real. But I think something that my acting teacher says in our classes, because we work a lot with like sense memory and memories in general, is like if you can't really remember something exactly as it happened, make up the givens of the situation, because it says more about you than the actual memory itself possibly could. And when you ask me that, I swear I remember like a gathering. This is very telling. I think is one of my. I have two older brothers. I think it would be one of my brother's birthday parties, and I'm like a little girl, and I'm like, clearly something was going on where I wasn't getting enough attention, and I remember kind of like going to my mom, be like, spread the word, and in 10 minutes I'm gonna put on a performance. And in my head, like as I imagine this, I'm like, I have like a hat and like a cane and like tap shoes and like all these things that I don't think I actually had. And I like had this big idea of something that I was going to do, and she's like, okay, that's so cute, and she's like telling her, Lindsey's gonna do a performance, and then I start to become very aware that everyone thinks it's very cute, and already like as a young child taking myself very seriously, like, oh my god, they think my performance is going to be this cute trite thing, and becoming very self-conscious and being, and like it coming to the time and being like, I can't go on like opening night level, like in the dressing room, like I can't possibly do this, and then there being no performance. But in its own way, I think that really was the performance, though it didn't look like what I imagined I wanted to show everyone. So that's an interesting tale. I don't know exactly how many details of that are completely correct, but I think there's something telling about that it's like, in terms of what pulls me back, I love putting on a show, and I love being performative and having a script or a dance or this realized thing to show people, but there is a deeper need underneath of the product itself that is driving the desire to show everyone what I got. It serves something more human and more vulnerable deep inside, and like I think that's the sensation that I'm really chasing, in a way, to like be seen and have it be witnessed by people, and for it to mean something to someone else in this world, because of art that's influenced me and been so meaningful in my life.
I loved what you just said, and so much of that was actually also in alignment with me. So I have two older brothers, and for me, it was always wanting to be like, and I have a lot of Leo placements in my chart, so I'm like, we need to come. Okay, there we go. Makes sense. We're like, I need to shine. This is my moment. I need to be seen because I am being, for starters, I'm the only girl in the family. I have two older brothers who were like, no, shush, shush. Now they're, I mean, obviously now we're best friends. Now they're like anything we can do to put you in the limelight. But at that time I was like, I need to take this moment and be like, this is mine to shine, to perform and do it. So I absolutely love that. And what you said too is like, there's a call and a need to want to be able to have and share this side of vulnerability for people to connect with, which is so powerful because art ultimately heals. And for someone to be able to showcase themselves, to be able to be seen for other people, to be like, I see myself on that. I can relate to that. It reminds people that they matter. And that's so beautiful that that's a calling for you to want to continue to do what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And for people to look up to you and be like, that's a role model for me. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So for you also, obviously from a young age, you were like, acting is definitely something that I want to do. But what was sort of that defining moment when you realized that you could pursue acting as a career, or that was the route that you want to take?
It's funny. Yeah. I mean, I've been acting in school and like community productions since I was like 10 or 11. And always did that through middle school, high school, and college, always with this idea of like, I love this thing and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, because I think I always looked at it quite more realistically, just like where I came from in Michigan and like my family and how, the types of jobs that we historically have, and just people like me don't really go move to LA, or a lot of people just stay around and figure something out. But I always knew that I loved that, and I was like, oh, career I'll figure out at some point. And it kind of like got more stressful towards the end of like high school, and you feel pressured to make decisions like that, and I just didn't really have a strong feeling of this or that I should be doing. I had some ideas, but they weren't really exciting to me. And then funnily enough, I had a friend. We were best friends. We actually were acting together in plays in school, and she was like, well, I'm gonna move to LA and be an actress. And that kind of just broke open my mind in that moment, because I was like, oh, like obviously people do that, but like we can really do that. Like, and we were so close at the time. We were inseparable for many years. I was just like, and another part of me was also like, well, I can't live without you. And so I was like, well, if you're going to do that, I want to do that. And then I realized, that's what I wanted, but it's, I sort of needed somebody else to like mirror that to me first before I could even take that desire very seriously. Yeah.
And so, sorry, I'm just thinking about like what you said, but that is like the one thing that I loved about that, but was also a little bit, I think is real in this world, is that people who are not from LA or that look at LA, they're like, how could I ever go there? How could someone from this area be able to go to LA and be able to make it? And I think that stops so many people from realizing their calling and realizing their dream. And, this friend that you had was ultimately the mirror that you needed to be like, no, I deserve this. Like, this is something that I can do, that I am meant to do, and to be able to allow you the opportunity to take that risk.
Then immediately the question was, well, the realistic part does come in of how can we afford that? Neither of us coming from families that could support that. And that is where the idea of sex work came in. And so it's really kind of a combination of those things. And it's very interesting. She was the one who came up with the idea of the moving to LA, and I think I'm the one who came up with the idea of, well, we can afford that if we strip. And those two things together made it so that we were both able to do that. And so, like, interesting, we really needed each other in that way. And so it was with, a great amount of not just dreaming and hopefulness, but like sacrifice in a lot of ways to make it happen. And I don't mean like sacrifice in a cliche way of like I sold away my dignity doing this job, but more so like I was so young, and I was in college when I started stripping, and I was working at school too. I had a study. I was working as a secretary in 2 offices. I was going to school full time, and I was stripping full time. And I was still acting in plays. I was very busy. I still got a lot done, but I think I also like sacrificed a lot of time and energy that I had to just kind of like be young to then be in this like grind set culture. And like the world of the strip club really can like make that so it's so easy to fall into, to be like, I'm a hustler and like money is the most important thing. Ultimately I'm proud of myself. I'm so happy that I did it, and stripping has ended up giving me so much more than just the ability to make money. But I don't want to sound like it was just like a bunch of dreaming, because it was, and it was like really, really hard work.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a journey. It's your journey, and that's what we are excited to, dive in more about and share and learn more about, because there's no right or wrong journey. And for you, of course, it's a sacrifice, but you made the sacrifice so that you could go after something that was innately something that you wanted to do, and that was a passion and a purpose for you and your destiny. And so when you moved to LA, you joined the stripper community there. Did your background in acting help provide support in your ability to perform on the stage?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do think while there were, starting in a strip club in Michigan and then moving to LA, or any strip club kind of has baseline rules that will be the same no matter where you are, and you learn skills. The biggest skill is like more important than any of the dancing, or even lap dancing, is like your ability to connect, to like cold approach people, make a conversation, make a relationship out of thin air with someone who you would probably never encounter or interact with outside in the real world. And that is obviously like that. I think, acting, that informs acting, and acting informs that as well. I think because of being able to, learning to take on different characters growing up in plays. And even before I was in sex work, I somehow kind of oftentimes was getting the like side roles in plays that were kind of slutty, like even in high school, I think. And we did Hello Dolly, and I remember I wanted to be Dolly so bad, and I worked so hard on it, and I ended up getting called back, but then I didn't get it, and then I got cast as, what is her, I think her name is literally Ernestina Money, and she's a prostitute. But like in the high school, obviously we don't like make that so obvious, but like that is the character. So I think I had like there's something in me that just generally people see that, and then and so I was able to inject that. But I think like moving to LA specifically, there is, at least in certain clubs, the club that I started in, which is, defunct as far as I'm concerned now, called Cheetahs Hollywood. It's just a completely different place now with different management and vibes. But at that time, it was like pretty historic and well known as like a place where you go see a really good stage show. And that doesn't just mean like technical ability. I think it also means like people doing performances that are more theatrical and outside of the box. And because I have this performance instinct and I love acting, and when I was in Michigan stripping, I was already doing too much on the stage, where it's like not really like the focus there to be like extremely performative and really theatrical. I think that like that made it easy for me to sort of slip into the culture of performance at this club, and drew customers. So that was very helpful for me. Yeah.
Did it ever give you like the opportunity simultaneously to be like, I want to try acting as this character tonight, so you could also work on your own acting skills and who you wanted to be or perform as for that night or for that week?
Yeah. I think, I've definitely dabbled in that. And I think the main, where you see that the most is kind of like just giving off the indication that you're attracted to the person that you're speaking with. So that's kind of a prerequisite in order to get anywhere, to make some money, and like you have to take that on with each customer. But it doesn't, you have to suss them out, and it doesn't look the same with every individual. But I do know some strippers who have completely false lives that they tell, so that it's a script that they have where they're like, this is my fake real name, and this is my fake real job, and where I'm fake really from, as an exercise to sort of protect their own true essence and identity. And I find that very understandable, and perhaps like even smarter. I don't know. My approach was usually to be more truthful, but I've definitely done oh yeah, we're sisters, we're cousins with another stripper. Yeah, guys love that. But the biggest performance is generally just like, yes, I'm very attracted to you. And just like any good acting performance, you can convince yourself that it's really happening as well. And that's a really interesting part of being in that industry.
Yeah, and it prepares you for outside roles and who you want to be in those roles, or any opportunity that comes up for a role that you might not have thought about playing yet, that you're like, how can I start to attempt to be this character? Let me try it here tonight.
Yeah.
And you've spoken a lot about the stripper community, and there's many angles to being safe, whether it's adopting a fake persona or being your real self. But what does it mean to be part, or what did it mean to be part of the Stargarden Strike? And what surprised you most about the experience of picketing for months with your fellow dancers?
That is an experience that it's just I don't even know where to begin, because it has been it's really the most meaningful thing that's probably ever happened to me, in so many ways, and in ways that I'm still experiencing. Like I think it's hard for people to understand what really happened, and it's hard for me to even describe it because it's still not finished, and it almost feels like this thing that will never be finished. But I can say that the beginning just cracked open my mind in a way of like, this all can mean so much more. I'd already gotten to the point where the money wasn't really the thing anymore, even though it's the main thing keeping me there, that was keeping me there in the industry, because this was post COVID-19 reopening. So it was the first club that I went back to after the things reopened during the pandemic, and had been actually fired from Cheetahs in 2019, right before the pandemic started. This is when, I say it's now defunct, because they sold it off, they pawned it off. Now it's run through 20 different hands. I don't even know. But they just kind of without any warning one day fired everybody over a text message. And that was really painful, because it was like, oh my God, I was under the assumption that I was one of the really like high value dancers there, and it does not fucking matter. I mean, we see this with so many industries, especially if you don't have unions, how disposable people can be, or can be treated, I should say. And so I was already out of a job when the pandemic happened and feeling very burned. And a couple dancers from Cheetahs began to put together a virtual show. And these were popping up kind of in different, like, factions from different clubs. Like, dancer from Jumbo's started this virtual show, Cyber Clown Girls, and dancers from Cheetahs, we started a show called Cool Cats Online. And all of a sudden I was sort of like, this changed my mind about stripping in so many ways, because not only were like all of the restrictions of typical stripper life on the shift like taken away. Like I didn't have to like give any money to some man. I didn't have to touch anybody. I didn't have to take my clothes off. I didn't have to dance to this music or dance this way. All of a sudden, like, we were able to do these performances that were literally whatever you want. They became so comedic, or they become so much more dramatic, or like a story. And it was just like, you could do whatever you wanted. So creative. Not only that, but also I had become a producer of these shows, and it was the first time I was responsible for not only myself, but other people making money. And we were pooling tips. So it was like, you know, I want to make sure that the most money is spent so that everybody is getting a fair cut. And I never worked in this way before. So that was like the whole pandemic that was going on. And then things started to reopen. And I actually, a dancer that I knew through Cool Cats, invited me back to Stargarden, which is a club I had worked at on and off a few times since moving to LA, but they had just come under new management. And my experience when I came back was so informed by that, because I had developed so much closer relationships, not only like professionally, but personally with the dancers I was working with online, because we really needed each other and we were all we had, and it wasn't just about money. So I went back into Stargarden with that mentality, and everyone there was really fostering that type of environment as well. It was the friendliest, most, and when I say everyone, I mean the dancers, the friendliest, most family-like environment. And we all made more money because we were all rooting for each other and sitting down with a customer, like, let's tip her together. And it was just such a friendly, less competitive environment. And so that turned into, we really stood up for each other when things were bad. But then we started to notice that our management didn't like dancers standing up for each other, didn't like dancers standing up for themselves. People started to be fired, and particularly in situations where it was a matter of calling out that a situation was unsafe or a customer was unsafe. We drafted a petition asking for our coworkers who'd been unfairly fired to be reinstated. We drafted in the petition, we asked for them to rescind this unlawful rule that they made. Basically, they made a rule that we weren't allowed to go to security of our own volition, and that if we had a safety concern, we had to go to the management, and then they would get security involved if they thought it was a big enough deal. And it was just like completely unworkable, as you can probably imagine. You need security that's empowered to make their own decisions in terms of like getting behind somebody and saying like, you can't do that to her. Yeah, they just like were basically not allowed to move until they were told to, and it was getting very ridiculous. So then we were locked out of work. We picketed for 8 months. We unionized with Actors Equity. We were supposed to have this huge trial. They ended up wanting to settle with us. They voluntarily recognized the union. We thought, oh, this is so great. We're going back to work with the union. Then we realized very, very quickly that our managers were just, in my opinion, allegedly, attempting to just sort of bide their time until we got so stressed we decided to leave because they were doing so much union busting and they were attempting to starve us out, in my opinion, based on the changes that they made in the club. Things like there was no ATM and they wouldn't change other customers' cash to ones to tip the dancers. Dancers had to bring their own ones to exchange with customers so that we would be able to be tipped. They made it a $40 cover charge, all of these things. So it's a very, very disappointing experience. And now we're on another indefinite strike awaiting more contract bargaining, more another trial maybe, based on all of the unlawful ways that they have dealt with our return to work. And and you can imagine in the current administration and their love for the labor board and unions and the fact that the region here of the National Labor Relations Board that oversees our case also oversees a case against SpaceX. You can imagine all the hands at play and different people's personal investments, and we're actually quite small potatoes compared to things like that. It's a very confusing, extreme, weird place to be. That's why I say I'm like, it's not even over. I don't know if it'll ever be over. Not to say that I want it to end, but the important thing is during this entire experience with Stargarden, a great number of us involved in the strike have begun being really invested in something that was just kind of born right before the strike started, called the Stripper Co-op, which is a co-op model strip club. It's a pop-up experience at this time because we're fundraising to get our own brick and mortar space where we can really do this every night. But it's all bodies, all genders, all race, ethnicities, very, very diverse dancer roster. And we split all the tips and all of the profits amongst the dancers, and all the dancers are the workers, and we share responsibilities. And it's really something that needs to happen. I'm not saying that, it'll happen with us or what, but like the sex work industry really needs to be in the hands of sex workers. Strippers need to run strip clubs. Because especially in a place like this, in LA, there's so much opportunity to take advantage, and 9 out of 10 employers will do that every chance that they can get, especially when it's so easy to take advantage of strippers because we have like no rights out in the world. A lot of people don't care. Yeah, so I just told you a really long story. But what surprised me most, I think, is what you asked. I think the most surprising thing is the fact that I really had the energy for all of this. And actually, I don't even want to say that I had the energy, but that it was so energizing and life-giving to me. When I look back particularly on like the most high intensity times, which was the picketing and all the ways that we were drawing people out. We had a reputation for being like the most fun picket ever because we were doing themes every night, and it was like a party, and we would do karaoke, and we had food being cooked. We had some amazing friend of ours, Juan, making food all the time on a little stove outside. Like, it was people actually enjoyed themselves, but it all at the same time it was really, really hard. It was kind of a mask for the thing that we were doing, which was so difficult, turning away customers, and we were very successful at that. I'm so surprised that experience gave me so much energy. It made me feel so alive and so like I had a purpose in a way that I've always been searching for. And it's hard now not knowing how the story is going to end. Because it meant so much to me, and it still means so much to me. And then it feels like the energy is sort of taken on completely different forms. And for me, it's sort of like pushed me into acting more, which was so unexpected. Yeah, I'm still, as you can see, trying to make sense of everything, but I will be doing that. I'll be doing that for the rest of my life.
You always need the time to reflect back on a situation, especially so monumental and huge like this, that was very transformative for you. But what you just said is also something I want to lean into a little bit more for those that don't know, that this strike sort of helped lead you into your breakout role in Anora. So I know that there's a little bit of a story behind this, but what was happening in your life when you crossed paths with Sean Baker? And what do you remember about that first conversation?
Um, yeah, so I it was in the midst of the strike, a night where we weren't picketing, but it was a weekend night, and I think about this a lot because I probably would have been working if it weren't for this. I think about all the time and place, like little things that the butterfly effect, I guess, that like leads
Divine
to these
timing.
moments.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was at an after party for an indie film premiere at Tenets of the Trees, which is just like such an LA ass, like if you know, you know. And it was sort of the end of the night, and I was with some friends, and I had been drinking, and I was a little drunk, and somebody pointed out Sean to me. I was like, oh my god, that's Sean Baker. And I just luckily had a little courage and was like, I feel like I'll regret something if I don't approach this person. Even just, and I was just approaching as a fan. I, you know, as an actor and as a sex worker, you can imagine his work is so meaningful in so many ways to me. And I tapped him on the shoulder, as many people were doing, and I was like, I'm such a fan of your work. I love you. And I, you know, ran away. That was very short-lived little interaction. But we connected on Instagram, and he saw that I was a stripper and that I was involved in this strike and unionization effort, and sent me a message saying, oh, I saw that you're doing this. I want to meet up with you and ask you questions about the strike and your experience. And also I have this role that I'm writing that I think you might be interested, or this film I'm writing, I think you might be interested in auditioning for one or two of the roles. And to me, that is, I think I say it every time, like I fell to the floor because I was just like, what do you mean? Like, that's my favorite director, and I didn't even have to fucking be like, use me, please, please, please. Like, he came to me. I mean, I came to him, but then he came to me with the proposition of, you know, the fact that he saw something in me that he's like, I'd be willing to work with this person. I don't know how he managed to think that. I'm so grateful. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think, you know, I kind of, it's sort of becoming like a legend at this point, how many times I've told this story. I was thinking about this today, and I was like, you know, I don't want to make it sound like it's too, I'm one of the lucky ones, you know, like, because it makes it seem like things aren't achievable to other people. And I hate that, like the elitist nature of that. But I think it's very important for me that other people understand that I'm not like a sex worker, like plucked from obscurity to become an actor. I think like the real need to approach him comes from being an actor and wanting to work together. And, you know, I wasn't under any assumption that that would really become a reality, but you have to take your chances where you can see them. And, you know, obviously he was interested in me probably primarily for my experience in the sex industry. But I have to think there's some element of my essence as who I am as a person that, you know, I mean, I think, you know, people who do this real world casting, whether it's a director or casting directors, they still have to have an eye for this person can just play themselves, or this person is interesting as a person but could potentially do more. And I'm hoping that is what I'm hoping that that's what I can demonstrate to people, or that I do. And yeah, so that first conversation was just so short lived, but it turned into so much. And I still had to audition and really put my heart in it, and really was like waiting for so long to get this audition, and hoping, and I think I'd almost like given up hope by the time that it did happen. And and that was all happening during the strike as well. So it's just like I feel like I'm in such a transitional period now, but that was such I feel like I'm in a very, very long transition.
No, and kudos to you for following your intuition. I mean, it not only did you follow your intuition to go up and say something to him, but you were respectful in the way that you approached him. And that for him was probably like, okay, there's something here where it's not someone who is coming to me trying to pressure me into being in the role. You were just like saying, hey, I feel so grateful for the work that you do create. It really allows me to feel seen and feel heard, and to really resonate a lot with myself and with my community that I'm a part of. I happen to also want to be tapping into and coming to you from the actor side and from a film lover, but you do such a wonderful job at being authentic in your storytelling. And more than anything, just thank you for shining a light on this community and representing it, and representing me ultimately.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, as an artist too, for people to come up. I mean, I know I started this conversation by, hey, I saw you in Hacks. Like, that's great to be like, I love that, and I love the work that you're creating, and all the stories and things like that. And so, like, you said that this was a big shift for you and very transformative, and still transformative. Once Anora came out, your visibility really shifted. What does it feel like to finally be seen by the industry, and what are some of the complexities that come with that kind of recognition?
It feels very complex. I obviously have so much gratitude and just like awe every day that this is like the position that I'm in, and how it came to be. But it's also like, this sort of, there's many old adages we could reference of like, careful what you wish for, or maybe more money, more problems, perhaps. I think like you just kind of don't know what it's gonna be like until you get there. And now, and I'm still not out of the place where I feel like I'm not out of the woods. You know what I mean? I'm getting some work and some recognition, but I do have so much vibration inside about, is this short-lived? Is this just some heat from this movie or one of these Oscars, and now people want to see me audition for things and they're interested? And like, what is the value that they recognize? Is it that I was attached to something that was inherently valuable? Is my value that I am a sex worker, and now it's become sort of a representation issue, and they want real sex workers to play real sex workers, and Hollywood hasn't really come to terms with if they respect us or not. But obviously everybody wants to give the impression of being very woke and accepting and thoughtful when it comes to casting these very like identity centered types of roles. So I'm just like, I'm filled with so many questions, and I don't know how exactly the world sees me or what they value. And I think I'm lucky just to be seen in any case. That's really like the thing I should focus on if I'm getting any opportunity, and I'll say that while these bigger projects I'm getting the chance to work on, primarily they still want to see me as a sex worker. folks who are in independent film, and like I've been doing a lot of short films as well, like more and more, and a lot of other types, some independent features as well. And I think people in that world have been a lot more creative about where they see me in the types of roles that they think I can play, and I'm very grateful for that too. Yeah, it's also just like, I don't really have anyone particularly that I feel like I can look to as like, oh, they've had a career like mine, or they've come to this in the way that I've come to this. Maybe there are some people who started in sex work and then they just like became actors, and because of this like star power that they have, but I almost feel like my success in acting is coming from a star power in stripping, or that's how it's seen by a lot of people anyways. And it's a lot to deconstruct and to look at and be like, okay, how can this transform for these people who have these big opportunities to give out? Like, how can I bring myself in a way that they become aware that my experience in sex work does not just amplify my ability to act as a sex worker character in something, it amplifies my ability to become any type of character. And I continually say this. I think that that's a misunderstanding that's sort of happening in the world of casting sex workers to play sex workers, or casting sex workers to write sex worker stories, or sex workers to direct sex worker stories, is that our work doesn't just inform us to be great at telling stories about our work. Our work is so experiential that it is a through line to other types of experiential work. Acting, writing, directing. Similarly in the way that I think like casting directors and producers and directors tend to be very interested in the transformation of a musician into an actor, or a model into an actor. A musician understands things about rhythm and melody that lend itself to acting. A model understands things about persona and being in front of a camera, and physical givens of appearing in your body that lend itself to acting. I think that sex workers have all of these skills as well that just kind of can be flipped into acting or writing or directing or any creative field. And that's what I really hope to be able to show people. But yeah, it's like I feel like I am blazing my own trail. And maybe that's a little, there's probably more places I could look, and so I can feel less alone. And I need to focus on that, and not make myself an island, because it just isn't true. But it can be difficult in personal relationships to even really just to talk about these things with people, because I feel like my sex worker friends get it in one way, my actor friends get it in one way, and then in other ways they might not want to hear it, because I am having some success and I have all of these questions and insecurities, and there is a sort of feeling that I've felt a lot of times when I hear people complaining about not getting, maybe they're not getting enough work or getting the work that they want, where it's like, at least you're working, bitch, shut the fuck up. So it's a very complicated reality. I'm very grateful to find myself here with the problems that I have right now, though. I'll say that. Any version of me growing up would be like, I want to be where she is now, and that's what I have to really look at.
Growing up to be someone that your younger self can reflect on and be so proud of, it's also a moment for you to just like be proud of yourself and be grateful for yourself and these problems that you have. Sometimes the journey is tougher because the calling is bigger. So for you are embarking on this whole journey. And I also love a little bit more about what you said from, it's so important to cast authentically from those communities to be able to really represent those stories But that doesn't mean that anyone should be then pigeonholed into just that cast and be typecasted as that. There is so much ability and there's so much room for creativity and for growth into other roles. And like you said, some of these creative traits that you have and that you embody, they are very transformative into any other role or into playing any other community that the script requires. Would love to learn though, are there any roles or genres that you're really hungry to explore and be able to dive into a little bit more?
I I am just like definitely wanting to move away from sex worker roles if I can. Unless maybe, there's a leading role with a lot of meat to it, because I think I also tend to play these sort of like side characters that can help drive the story, but I don't need to be sucking up all those jobs. I really want my legacy to be that people look at me and go, oh, if she can do that, then this other person from that industry could do this too. And not that I just hoard all of these roles. I think I really want to, I want to like play every type of role. I'm very drawn to just this sort of like resilient white trash type of woman, as I am to like a very deranged and disturbed, glamorous, wealthy type of woman, and like and everything in between. What I want is, I think what I'm describing, I want more opportunities to transform my experience into something else, because it feels, I think it only becomes art when it transcends our reality. And I don't want to have to play so close to real life, to the bone, or maybe closer to the bone in a different way, to be able to show that my experiences can lend themselves to different types of roles. Genres, I love I love a elevated horror of a Jordan Peele, or like Ari Aster even. There's certain directors I'm very interested in, but also I'm just interested in all kinds of stories, and I don't want to be too I'm loving all these like very small independent projects I'm doing right now, because it's like I also love working on the TV show I'm working on, but it's so big and it's so out there, and it's many people crumbling down to make one decision that you don't really see. And I love the process of independent filmmaking, and that you can really see how collaborative it is in the moment. You can like feel the heartbeat and this sort of sensation of the urgency of the art, because like we have 2 days to make this crowd-funded short film in my grandma's house. I think I like all of the inherent challenges like that are set up there. It's just sort of like a puzzle more in a way. And yeah.
Well, on the topic of wanting to explore a variety of different characters, what does range mean to you in terms for defining for yourself?
I think like for me it would be the ability to play something that is so outside of myself. Yeah, I love theater because it tends to be more transformative. You're playing in pre-existing roles that they have so much history, and you can go so far so often with you'll see so much more specific costuming and makeup and a way of talking and living that belongs to a certain period or belongs to a certain region that, part of being in LA and being an actor here is that you're getting things that have never been worked on before. And I'm laughing because this is something that's my teacher is saying a lot in my acting class right now as well. There isn't a sort of like a historical like pressure to rise to the occasion of the role as often as there is in theater with iconic roles. And I would love to know that I have what it takes to play more of those types of roles where it may not look like me or sound like me, Lindsey, as you see in front of you, but there is something from my life so personal that is like universal in the role, that anybody can recognize and understand without having to know anything about me.
I love that. And if a filmmaker years from now were to write a character inspired by you, what do you hope that they would get right?
That's an interesting question, especially because you say inspired by me and not a character of me. Because if it was a character of me, I think I'd really say that, like, I hope that, I think I touched on this earlier, but like, I do want people to know I'm not a stripper that became an actress. Really, my need for stripping came from my need from acting, and it just kind of oscillated from there, and it continues to do so. But if it were just to be inspired by me, I don't know what is like essential about me. I think is like a desire to, I really want to be seen, and I really want people to see me like struggling to get what I get in a way. I think that goes to what I just said. Like, I want to be like really understood and not to kind of like become a persona, which is so hard because you have to do that in a way in order to get attention, and you have to like lean into the mythology of your life, which is great advice, but it's also sort of a trap because then it doesn't, it can lose something really real, which is like, it's not a log line. Like, it's like it's a really detailed story. I would hope that people understand. I would hope to be presented as somebody who like just like fought really hard to get what they needed, to be where they want to be, and but not in like an aggressive way, like in a way that comes from like that inner like softness, just like really driven by the need to be seen.
Well, the only thing that I can say is that we definitely see you, and we are so excited to watch your journey.
You see me struggling. This is what I'm just.
We see you as an artist that you want to be, and it's hard. That was such a hard question. Like, I'll state that, but it was definitely a very hard question to be able to be like.
It's an important question. It really is an important question for an artist to.
But your
like,
journey is so
what are you bringing? Well, yes, but I mean, I just think that like in any case, it's like, what am I bringing that makes me get the role out of someone else? Or if I were writing a song, like what about my song hits people more than another's? And that is, I think that's like the question that I'm going to be asking forever. And I think like as long as I struggle to ask that question and answer it and to be seen dealing with it, that really sort of is the thing. But you have to, I hope to put it into something and not just be here on a screen struggling like I do every day.
It's not about struggling. It's about finding how you can become the artist that you know that you are. So it's, for you, it's like I said, your journey is still unfolding. So to be able to tap into that role or that artist or that opportunity that you haven't yet explored, but knowing that that is something that you are going to do will help answer that question along the way.
Thank you.
Going back to the very beginning, can you share a pivotal moment from your childhood that influenced your path?
Yeah, I had the experience of seeing particular movies or plays throughout my life that became such a need for me to like watch and rewatch because I think I went through a very hard time as a young kid and didn't have people to talk to about what I was experiencing or anything to put it into like I feel like I do now. And I saw, my mom took me to see a high school production of Little Shop of Horrors when I was probably like 7 or 8. And I do talk about this a lot, but I credit a lot to it. That was so thrilling to me, everything about it. And then we got the DVD from Blockbuster, and my dad burnt a copy of it, and I would have to watch it every day. Because my world was just so that I didn't want to be where I was. I wanted to like go inside the screen and live in this story. It's emotional. And that happened throughout my life with different movies, mainly that, and then with Rocky Horror also, whenever I saw that when I was like 14. Particularly like these like musicals where people were living in like such a grand way. And Rocky Horror, all the implications of sexuality and gender and people investigating, learning those parts of themselves and knowing those parts of themselves in a way that I hadn't been exposed to really before, that I was just like so thrilled by. And just like, I think that's like how I know that I need this, because I needed it so strongly to receive it and to experience it in front of me as a kid, that now I need to offer it. I really need to be able to take what I've been given and give it to somebody else and have it be meaningful for them.
I love that. And we are so excited to watch your journey unfold and all of the amazing work that you are going to accomplish. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for being you.
Thank you.
And to everyone at home, always be you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Did you enjoy this week's journey? So do we. And don't forget to give us a follow on all of our other socials at NextFoundArtist. Also, head on over to our website, nextfoundartist.com, to find and watch independent films from your next favorite artist.